Hey there, and welcome to True Scary Stories. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're watching. That helps YouTube know you love creepy stories, and it'll keep sending more your way.
3 creepy true bad friend horror stories. Hey everyone. Before we begin tonight's stories, I just want to say, we all have friends we trust. People we let into our lives, into our homes, into our secrets. But sometimes, the person you think you know best is hiding something dark. Something twisted. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 disturbing stories about friendships that took a horrifying turn. These are real experiences sent in by viewers like you. So turn off the lights, put in your headphones, and whatever you do, don't listen to this one alone. Let's begin. Story 1. The Spare Key. This story comes from a guy named Derek, who was 24 at the time this happened. He'd been living in a small one-bedroom apartment in Portland, Oregon, working as a graphic designer from home. Derek had a close friend named Tyler. They'd known each other since high school, and Tyler was one of those guys who seemed harmless. Quiet, kind of awkward but loyal. At least, that's what Derek thought. Tyler didn't have many friends besides Derek. He'd gone through a rough breakup about 6 months before this story takes place, and Derek had been there for him, letting him crash on the couch when he needed to get away from his ex's apartment, listening to him vent for hours. Derek felt bad for the guy. So when Tyler asked if he could have a spare key to Derek's place, just in case of emergencies, he said, Derek didn't think twice about it. Sure, man, Derek remembered telling him. I mean, you're over here all the time anyway. Tyler smiled. That same quiet smile he always had. Thanks, dude. I really appreciate it. For a few weeks, everything seemed normal. Tyler would stop by occasionally, usually texting first. They'd play video games, order pizza, watch movies. The usual stuff. But then Derek started noticing little things. Small things that didn't quite add up. Like one evening, Derek came home from getting groceries and found his bedroom door slightly open. He always kept it closed, always. It was just a habit. But there it was, cracked open about 6 inches. He stood in the hallway, grocery bags in hand, staring at that door. His heart started beating a little faster. Hello? He called out. Nothing. He stepped forward slowly, pushing the door open with his foot. The room was empty. Everything looked normal. Bed made, laptop on the desk, nothing out of place. Derek let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Maybe he'd just forgotten to close it that morning. Maybe he was being paranoid. But then it happened again. And again. Over the next 2 weeks, Derek would come home to find small things, different. His bathroom cabinet open when he knew he'd closed it. His TV on a different channel than he'd left it. One time, he found a glass of water on his kitchen counter, half full, and he lived alone. He hadn't had anyone over in 3 days. The creepiest part? His apartment door was always locked. Dead-bolted. Nobody had broken in. At least, not in the traditional sense. Derek's mind kept going back to Tyler. He was the only other person with a key. But why would Tyler come into his apartment when he wasn't home? It didn't make sense. Tyler had never been weird or invasive before. Still, Derek couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One Friday night, Derek decided to test his theory. He told Tyler he was going out of town for the weekend, visiting his parents in Seattle. It was a lie. Instead, Derek checked into a cheap motel about 10 minutes from his apartment. Then he did something he wasn't proud of, but he needed to know the truth. He installed a hidden camera in his living room. It was one of those small spy cameras you can order online, disguised as a clock. He set it up on his bookshelf, angled toward the front door and hallway. Then he left, locked the door, and waited at the motel with his laptop, watching the live feed. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Derek almost felt stupid. Maybe he really was just being paranoid. Maybe he'd been leaving doors open and forgetting about it. But then, around 11:30 p.m., The feed showed something that made Derek's blood run cold. His front door opened, and Tyler walked in. Derek watched in disbelief as Tyler stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and stood there in the dark living room. He didn't turn on any lights. He just stood there. For almost a full minute, Tyler stood perfectly still in the darkness, like he was listening, waiting. Then he started walking, slowly, through the living room, past the camera, down the hallway toward Derek's bedroom. Derek's hands were shaking as he watched. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. What the hell was Tyler doing? The camera angle couldn't see into the bedroom, but Derek watched the hallway for what felt like an eternity. 15 minutes passed. 20. Then Tyler emerged from the bedroom, and Derek saw something that made his stomach drop. Tyler was holding Derek's pillow, holding it close to his face, smelling it. Derek felt like he was going to be sick. He watched as Tyler carried the pillow to the couch, sat down, and just held it, hugging it against his chest like it was some kind of security blanket. Tyler sat there in the dark, in Derek's apartment, clutching Derek's pillow, for almost an hour. Finally, Tyler stood up, carefully placed the pillow back in the bedroom, and left the apartment. Derek watched him lock the door behind him on his way out, as if nothing had happened. Derek didn't sleep that night. He sat in that motel room, staring at his laptop screen, replaying the footage over and over. His mind was racing. Should he call the police? What would he even say? My friend came into my apartment with a key I gave him and smelled my pillow? It sounded insane. But Derek knew he had to confront Tyler. He had to end this, whatever this was. The next morning, Derek drove back to his apartment. He changed the locks immediately, called a locksmith, and had them changed within 2 hours. Then he texted Tyler. Hey man, we need to talk. Can you come over? Tyler replied almost instantly. Sure. Be there in 20. When Tyler showed up, Derek opened the door but didn't let him inside. Tyler noticed immediately. You gonna let me in or? Tyler asked, half joking. I saw you, Derek said. His voice was steady, but his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. I saw you come into my apartment last night. Tyler's face went blank, completely expressionless. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, slowly, that quiet smile crept across his face. You weren't supposed to know about that, Tyler said softly. Derek felt his skin crawl. What the hell is wrong with you, man? You've been coming in here when I'm not home? Going through my stuff? I wasn't going through your stuff, Tyler said, his voice still eerily calm. I was just spending time with you. In a way. That's insane, Tyler. You understand that's insane, right? Tyler's smile faded. His eyes went cold. You don't get it. You're the only person who's ever cared about me. The only one. I just wanted to feel close to you. By breaking into my apartment? Derek's voice was rising now. By smelling my pillow like some kind of psycho? I didn't break in. Tyler snapped. You gave me a key. You said I could use it. For emergencies. This was an emergency. Tyler's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I needed you. Derek stepped back, his hand on the door, ready to slam it shut. Stay away from me, Tyler. I mean it. I changed the locks. If you come near me or my apartment again, I'm calling the cops. For a long moment, Tyler just stared at him. Then he laughed, a short, bitter sound. You'll regret this, Derek. You'll see. You'll realize you need me too. Then he turned and walked away. Derek locked the door and immediately called the non-emergency police line. He filed a report, gave them the camera footage, and explained everything. The officer on the phone told him to document everything and call 911 if Tyler showed up again. For the next few weeks, Derek didn't hear from Tyler. No texts, no calls, no sign of him. Derek started to relax, thinking maybe Tyler had finally gotten the message. But then, one night around 3 a.m., Derek woke up to the sound of his doorknob rattling. He shot up in bed, his heart racing. The sound stopped. Then it started again, slow, deliberate. Someone was trying to get in. Derek grabbed his phone and dialed 911, whispering into the phone as he crept toward the door. Through the peephole, he could see a figure standing in the hallway. It was dark, but Derek could make out enough to know who it was. Tyler. Just standing there, staring at the door. The police arrived within 6 minutes, but by the time they got there, Tyler was gone. They searched the building and found no trace of him. But they did find something else. Scratched into the door, just below the peephole, were 4 words. "You were always mine." Derek moved out 2 days later. He never saw Tyler again, but sometimes, late at night, he still gets texts from unknown numbers. They never say much. Just things like, "I miss you. Why did you leave? I'm still thinking about you." Derek changes his number every few months. But the messages always find him somehow. He still doesn't know where Tyler is. Story 2, The Photographer. This next story comes from a woman named Jenna, who was 22 when this happened. She was living in Austin, Texas, working as a barista and going to community college part-time. Jenna had a best friend named Madison, Maddie for short, who she'd met during freshman year. They were inseparable. Did everything together. Sleepovers, road trips, late-night diner runs. They even had matching tattoos on their wrists. Little stars. Maddie was bubbly, outgoing, always taking pictures of everything. Maddie was obsessed with photography. She had this expensive Canon camera that she took everywhere, constantly snapping photos of buildings, sunsets, coffee cups, people. Jenna thought it was cute at first. Maddie would post the photos on Instagram, and people loved them. She was actually pretty talented. But then Jenna started noticing something strange. It started when Jenna was scrolling through Maddie's Instagram late one night. She was just killing time, double-tapping pictures of lattes and string lights, when she came across a photo that made her pause. It was a picture of Jenna, asleep on her couch. Jenna stared at the photo, her stomach twisting. She didn't remember Maddie taking that picture. The angle was weird too, like it had been taken from across the room, zoomed in slightly. Jenna was curled up on her side, mouth slightly open, one arm draped over the back of the couch. The caption read, "My favorite person in the world. So peaceful." Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. It was a sweet caption, sure, but something about the photo felt invasive. Why would Maddie take a picture of her sleeping without waking her up? And why post it publicly? Jenna scrolled further back through Maddie's feed. That's when she saw more. Another photo of Jenna, this time in her car. She was looking down at her phone, unaware of the camera. The photo had been taken from the passenger seat, but Jenna didn't remember Maddie being in the car with her that day. Then another. Jenna at the grocery store, reaching for something on a shelf. She definitely hadn't been with Maddie that day either. Jenna's hands started shaking. She kept scrolling. More photos. Dozens of them. Jenna walking into her apartment building. Jenna at a coffee shop, sitting alone. Jenna at the gym, mid-workout. All candid. All taken without Jenna knowing. Some of the photos were from weeks ago. Some from months. Jenna felt like she was going to throw up. She immediately called Maddie. "Hey, babe. What's up?" Maddie answered, her voice bright and cheerful. "Maddie, why are there so many pictures of me on your Instagram?" Jenna tried to keep her voice steady, but it came out shaky. There was a pause on the other end. Then Maddie laughed. "Oh my God, you saw those? I was wondering when you'd notice." "When I'd notice?" "Maddie, some of these pictures. I didn't even know you were there. How did you?" "I'm just really good at being sneaky." Maddie giggled. "You're my muse, Jenna. You're so photogenic. I couldn't help myself. But some of these are from when I was alone. How were you? I told you I'm sneaky. Come on, don't be mad. They're beautiful pictures. You should be flattered." Jenna didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to believe Maddie was just being weird and artsy. But another part of her, the part that was making her hands shake, knew something was very, very wrong. Maddie, can you delete them? Please? I don't. I don't feel comfortable with you posting pictures of me without asking. Another pause. Then Maddie's voice changed. It got colder. Seriously? You're going to make this a thing? I'm just asking you to delete them. Fine. Whatever. I'll delete them. Maddie hung up without saying goodbye. Another photo of Jenna, this time in her car. She was looking down at her phone, unaware of the camera. The photo had been taken from the passenger seat, but Jenna didn't remember Maddie being in the car with her that day. Then another. Jenna at the grocery store, reaching for something on a shelf. She definitely hadn't been with Maddie that day either. Jenna's hands started shaking. She kept scrolling. More photos. Dozens of them. Jenna walking into her apartment building. Jenna at a coffee shop, sitting alone. Jenna at the gym, mid-workout. All candid. All taken without Jenna knowing. Some of the photos were from weeks ago. Some from months. Jenna felt like she was going to throw up. She immediately called Maddie. Hey, babe. What's up? Maddie answered, her voice bright and cheerful. Maddie, why are there so many pictures of me on your Instagram? Jenna tried to keep her voice steady, but it came out shaky. There was a pause on the other end. Then Maddie laughed. Oh my God, you saw those? I was wondering when you'd notice. When I'd notice. Maddie, some of these pictures. I didn't even know you were there. How did you? I'm just really good at being sneaky. Maddie giggled. You're my muse, Jenna. You're so photogenic. I couldn't help myself. But some of these are from when I was alone. How were you? I told you I'm sneaky. Come on, don't be mad. They're beautiful pictures. You should be flattered. Jenna didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to believe Maddie was just being weird and artsy. But another part of her, the part that was making her hands shake, knew something was very, very wrong. Maddie, can you delete them? Please? I don't feel comfortable with you posting pictures of me without asking. Another pause. Then Maddie's voice changed. It got colder. Seriously? You're going to make this a thing? I'm just asking you to delete them. Fine. Whatever. I'll delete them. Maddie hung up without saying goodbye. Jenna sat on her bed, staring at her phone. She felt sick. She checked Instagram an hour later. Maddie had deleted the photos. But somehow, that didn't make Jenna feel any better. Over the next few days, Jenna started paying more attention. She noticed Maddie's car parked on her street more often than usual. Once, Jenna looked out her apartment window and saw Maddie sitting in her car, just sitting there, staring up at Jenna's building. When Jenna confronted her about it, Maddie laughed it off. I was just sitting there for a minute before I came up. Chill out, Jenna. But Maddie hadn't come up. She'd driven away 20 minutes later without ever getting out of the car. Then came the breaking point. One night, Jenna woke up to a sound. A soft clicking noise. She opened her eyes, disoriented, and saw a flash of light. Someone was in her room, taking pictures. Jenna screamed and scrambled for the lamp on her nightstand. The light flooded the room, and there, standing at the foot of her bed with a camera in her hands, was Maddie. What the fuck, Maddie? Jenna shouted, her voice cracking. Maddie didn't move. She just stood there, camera still raised, staring at Jenna through the viewfinder. How did you get in here? Maddie slowly lowered the camera. Her face was blank. Emotionless. You gave me a key, remember? Last year. Jenna's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode. That doesn't mean you can just walk into my apartment in the middle of the night. I wanted to get some shots of you sleeping, Maddie said, her voice flat. Natural light is best in the early morning. You're insane. Get out. Get out right now. Maddie's expression finally changed. Her eyes narrowed, and her mouth twisted into something ugly. I'm insane? I'm the one who's been there for you through everything, Jenna. I'm the one who actually cares about you. And this is how you thank me? Get out. Maddie stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled, a slow, creepy SM. A slow, creepy smile that made Jenna's skin crawl. Fine. I'll go. But you're going to regret this. She turned and walked out, still carrying her camera. Jenna locked the door behind her, shoved a chair under the handle, and called the police. They took a report, but because Maddie had technically had a key and hadn't stolen anything or physically harmed Jenna, there wasn't much they could do. They advised Jenna to get a restraining order. Jenna changed her locks the next day. Blocked Maddie on everything. But that wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, Jenna started getting emails. No sender name, just a blank address. The emails contained photos. Hundreds of photos. All of Jenna. Photos from inside her apartment. Photos of her in the shower, the lens fogged but the outline of her body visible. Photos of her changing clothes. Sleeping. Eating. Living her life, completely unaware. Some of the photos were timestamped from over a year ago. Jenna felt her entire body go numb. Maddie had been watching her, documenting her, for over a year. The final email contained one photo. It was taken from outside Jenna's bedroom window. The curtains were open just a crack, and through it, you could see Jenna sitting on her bed, looking at her phone. The caption underneath read, "You'll always be my favorite subject." Jenna moved out that week. She stayed with her parents for 2 months before finding a new apartment across town. She never heard from Maddie again, but sometimes, Jenna still gets the feeling she's being watched. She never opens her curtains anymore. And she checks every corner of every room for cameras. Just in case. Story 3: The Basement. This last story comes from a guy named Aaron, who was 19 at the time. He was a sophomore in college, living off campus in a cheap rental house with 2 roommates. One of those roommates was a guy named Ethan, who Aaron had known since middle school. They weren't super close, but they got along well enough. Ethan was quiet, kept to himself mostly, spent a lot of time in his room or down in the basement where he had a little workshop set up. Ethan was into woodworking. He'd build little shelves, picture frames, stuff like that. Aaron thought it was cool. Ethan even made Aaron a desk for his birthday one year. It was a nice gesture. The house they rented was old, built in the 70s, and it had this unfinished basement that was dark and damp and smelled like mildew. Aaron hated going down there, so he usually avoided it. Ethan, on the other hand, practically lived down there. He'd be down in the basement for hours at a time, sawing and hammering away. Aaron didn't think much of it. Until the smell started. It began about 3 months into the school year. A faint, sour smell that seemed to seep up through the floorboards. At first, Aaron thought maybe something had died in the walls, a rat or a squirrel. It happened in old houses sometimes. But the smell got worse. Stronger. It started to smell like rot. Like meat left out in the sun for too long. Aaron mentioned it to Ethan one day. "Dude, do you smell that? I think something died in the basement." Ethan shrugged. "I don't smell anything." "Seriously? It's so bad, man. It's making me nauseous." "Maybe it's your imagination," Ethan said, not looking up from his phone. But Aaron knew it wasn't his imagination. The smell was real. And it was getting unbearable. One night, Aaron's other roommate, a guy named Chris, pulled him aside. "Dude, we need to check the basement. That smell is coming from down there, I know it." Aaron agreed. They decided to go down while Ethan was out at class. The basement stairs creaked under their weight as they descended. The smell hit them like a wall, thick and putrid, so strong that Aaron had to cover his nose with his shirt. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered as they reached the bottom. Ethan's workshop was set up in the far corner. A workbench, tools hanging on the wall, piles of wood and sawdust. But what caught Aaron's attention was the door. A door he never noticed before. It was tucked into the back corner of the basement, partially hidden behind a stack of plywood. The door was old, wooden, and had a padlock on it. "What the hell is that?" Chris whispered. Aaron's heart was pounding. "I don't know. I've never seen it before." They approached the door slowly. The smell was stronger here. It was coming from behind the door. Chris reached for the padlock. It wasn't locked. It was just hooked through the latch, hanging open. "Should we?" Chris looked at Aaron. Aaron nodded, even though every instinct in his body was screaming at him to turn around and leave. Chris pulled the padlock off and slowly opened the door. The smell that poured out was so overwhelming that both of them gagged. Aaron stumbled backward, his eyes watering. Chris covered his mouth and nose, but he didn't move. He was staring into the room. "Oh my God!" Chris whispered. "Oh my God, Aaron, look!" Aaron forced himself to step forward and look inside. The room was small, maybe 8 by 8 feet. The walls were bare concrete. And hanging from the ceiling, suspended by hooks, were dozens of Polaroid photos. They were pinned to strings that crisscrossed the room like a spider web. But it was the photos themselves that made Aaron's blood turn to ice. They were all of the same girl. A girl Aaron didn't recognize. Brown hair, maybe early 20s. In the photos, she was doing normal things, walking down the street, sitting in a coffee shop, getting into her car. But as Aaron's eyes moved across the photos, they became more disturbing. Photos of her through windows. Photos of her sleeping. Photos of her in her bathroom, unaware of the camera. And then, at the far end of the room, photos of her tied to a chair. Duct tape over her mouth. Eyes wide with terror. The last photo showed her slumped over. Lifeless. Aaron felt like he was going to pass out. His entire body went cold. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. "We need to call the police," Chris said, his voice shaking. "We need to call them right now." They ran upstairs, both of them fumbling for their phones. Aaron's hands were shaking so badly he could barely dial 911. The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency?" There's a room in our basement. There are photos. I think my roommate killed someone." "Sir, I need you to slow down." "What's your address?" Aaron rattled off the address, his voice cracking. The operator told them police were on the way and to get out of the house immediately. Aaron and Chris ran outside and waited on the front lawn. It felt like hours before the police arrived, but it was probably only 10 minutes. When the officers went down into the basement and saw the room, their faces went pale. More police showed up. Then detectives. Then crime scene investigators. Aaron and Chris gave their statements, explained everything. The officers asked about Ethan, where he was, when he'd be back. Aaron told them Ethan had a class until 7. The police waited. When Ethan came home, he saw the squad cars parked outside the house and immediately turned around and ran. He didn't get far. The officers tackled him in the middle of the street. The investigation that followed uncovered the horrifying truth. The girl in the photos was named Sophie Martin. She'd been a barista at a coffee shop Ethan frequented. He'd become obsessed with her, started following her, taking pictures. Then, 6 months earlier, he'd kidnapped her. He'd kept her in that room in the basement for 3 days before killing her. Her body was found buried in the woods about 20 miles outside of town. The worst part? Aaron and Chris had been living in that house, sleeping upstairs, completely unaware that a girl was being held captive and murdered in the basement below them. Ethan was arrested and eventually sentenced to life in prison without parole. Aaron and Chris both moved out immediately. Either of them could sleep for months. Aaron still has nightmares about that room, the photos, the smell, the realization that he'd been living above a killer's lair. He never saw Ethan again. But sometimes, late at night, Aaron thinks about the desk Ethan built for him. The one he made in that basement workshop, just a few feet away from where Sophie died. Aaron burned that desk the day he moved out. He never wants to remember. So those were tonight's 3 stories. 3 friendships that turned into nightmares. Derek's spare key, Jenna's obsessed photographer, and Aaron's roommate with a dark secret in the basement. It just goes to show that sometimes, the people we trust the most are the ones we should be the most afraid of. If you have a scary story you'd like to share, send it to me. And as always, stay safe out there. Lock your doors. Change your locks. And maybe, be a little more careful about who you call a friend. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.